While on Bhagwan's path, sometimes one feels that you're trapped somehow in the corner, and even though you try hard, self-inquiry, surrendering to God or the self, you don't seem to go anywhere. You're trapped in your, and you feel you can't go forward at all. Can you tell us about some different types of devotees? Because there's these very, very rare ones, the few who got it instantly, but for all of us rest, we have to practice years and years and years.
I've been asked to, I won't say rank devotees of Bhagavan, but to give examples of people I thought were the closest or the ones who got the most out of Bhagavan. That's a somewhat invidious job. I don't really want to go there and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These are the best. I'm in no position to judge these people. But I'll start off by saying that Bhagavan classified all devotees. He said some are like gunpowder. You just put a single spark on a pile of gunpowder, it goes poof, and it's all over in one go. He said there's another category who are like charcoal. You can put a spark on charcoal, you can puff and fan it a bit, and then it catches fire. And the third group, to which I think virtually everyone belongs, he says, are the banana trees. He said you can't incinerate a banana tree, you can't put a candle underneath or put it on the fire and expect anything to happen. He said these people need a long period of drying out, and only when they're completely dry can you even consider the possibility of combustion. So at the top end of that category, there are the piles of gunpowder. There are not many of those. Bhagavan did actually answer this question for you. He was walking with Viswanatha Swamy a long, long time ago, and quite spontaneously he said, all kinds of beings and people are attracted to the presence of a jnani. He said gods, devas sometimes come down from the heavens, Brahma rishis sometimes come in strange forms, not necessarily human. And he said, and devotees of all levels of maturity, they come for the jnani's darshan. And then he said, of all the people who came to see me, the one who arrived in the most advanced state on day one was a man called Mastan. Mastan was actually a Muslim, and he was a village weaver from a small town about 40 miles from here. He had heard about Bhagavan through a friend of his called Akalandama, who used to walk from that town to bring food to Bhagavan. She persuaded Mastan to come with her, and according to all the stories I've read, Mastan didn't even get as far as seeing Bhagavan. He went to Virupaksha cave. I think then, as now, there was an outer gate into a little courtyard and then a door into the cave itself. And he simply had his hands on the gate like this. But the moment he touched the gate, he went into a deep, paralyzing samadhi. And Bhagavan was told about this. He said, there's some man at the gate. He looks like he's having an electric shock, kind of. he can't be prized off the gate. And Bhagavan came out and realized that this new man had gone into samadhi simply by touching the gate. He didn't even need to come in and see him. Kunju Swami said he was there for 8 hours. That seems quite reasonable. So he obviously was, possibly not in the gunpowder state, but his first encounter with the presence of Bhagavan, even though he didn't see him physically, caused him to have a direct experience of the self, which lasted for most of the day. Then I could mention Lakshmana Swamy, who came in 1949. There was a big festival going on, a celebration of the inauguration of the Mother's Temple. He said there were far too many people, he couldn't get anywhere near Bhagavan. So he went away, did 6 months intense japa in a hut on the beach in Andhra Pradesh. He was chanting Hari Ramana. He took Bhagavan as his guru. He was chanting Hari Ramana, Hari Ramana. He said, I knew about self-inquiry. I had read the Telugu version of self-inquiry, but it didn't appeal to me. But he said, whenever the japa of my guru's name became sufficiently intense, it would stop my mind completely. And as a consequence of this stopping, spontaneously the question, who am I, would appear in my consciousness. And as an answer to that question, I would have a direct experience of the self. So this was in his hut on the beach. So he came back about 6 months later. Again, a very busy time. It was Vijayadasami Day. The new hall in this case was so busy, he decided he didn't want to be distracted by everyone coming in, prostrating, handing over their offerings. So he sat outside the hall, looking in to Bhagavan sitting on his sofa. This was about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Bhagavan came from the Nirvana room, noticed Lakshmana Swamy, who was standing namasteing outside the door, gave him a long look, and I think at that moment Bhagavan knew this was the big day for Lakshmana Swamy. He went inside, he sat on his sofa, and then he whispered to Muruggana, who was sitting next to him, and pointed to Lakshmana Swamy outside. We infer that he was saying, go and look after him. He needs someone to look after him for today. So the next thing Lakshmana Swamy remembers is Muruggana sitting next to him outside. He said, Lakshmana Swamy said, I started to do my japa, Hari Ramana, which I've been doing for months. And as on the beach, he said, after a few repetitions, the question, who am I, spontaneously appeared inside me. The eye went back into the heart, and he said that he had a vision of the heart center on the right side of the chest, and he said in that heart center Bhagavan's face was smiling and looking at him from the inside, and he said after some time the smiling face disappeared. He said the eye went back to its source, disappeared, and never arose again. So for him that was the moment of realization. He did it essentially in several months of hard practice by himself, one visit to Bhagavan in which he didn't even sit in the same hall as Bhagavan, he was sitting outside. And Bhagavan's intuition that he needed looking after was quite correct, because he found himself to be completely paralyzed by this experience. He couldn't move, he couldn't talk. He says he was probably there about 5 or 6 hours, and intermittently he would hear Muruggana saying, Swami, Swami, are you all right? But he was in no condition to give any response. One thing I need to say about Vijayadasami Day is that this is the day when the female deity is paraded around the mother's temple, and Lakshmana Swamy had inadvertently picked a spot that was on the walkway that the goddess would have been paraded past. So I suspect that Muruggana must have interceded with all the people who wanted to push Lakshmana Swamy off the walkway, saying, Bhagavan has told me to sit here and look after him. Don't disturb him, Bhagavan's told me to sit here. So Lakshmana Swamy said, I remember dimly, vaguely, the Vijayadasami procession going round and round, but I was incapable of either registering it or getting out of their way. He said eventually I managed to get up and stagger back to my allotted slot in the men's dormitory, and the next day he went to Bhagavan and gave him a note in Telugu which said, in your presence and by the quest I have realized the self, which is pretty direct. And a devotee called Venkataratnam, who knew Telugu, looked at this note and I'm guessing thought, another deluded young boy come to boast, gave the note to Bhagavan, who read it, looked directly at Lakshmana Swamy, and Lakshmana Swamy said his face just lit up into this amazing smile, because Bhagavan had actually recognized that someone finally had come into his presence, asked themselves, who am I, and got the right answer. I think he'd been telling people to do this for decades, but the success rate was vanishingly small. But here was a boy who'd come and done it on his first day and got the direct experience, the direct, permanent, definitive experience of the self by having the question appear inside him. He didn't even need to ask it. And after that, Venkataratnam was told to come and look after Lakshmana Swamy by Bhagavan, so Venkataratnam knew that this wasn't a false claim. So he came and said, in all the years I've been doing this job, no one has ever handed in a note like this and had Bhagavan respond in this way, so I know it's a genuine claim. And he said, I want to serve you in the same way I'm serving Bhagavan, and tried to massage his legs. Lakshmana Swamy was just a young boy at the time. He was a bit embarrassed by this and tried to tell him he didn't need any service. So that is another spectacular instance of somebody getting it by very, very hard, unremitting practice, and by asking the question, who am I, in Bhagavan's presence. Oh, I should mention that when he was sitting on the beach in Andhra Pradesh, he caught malaria, which in those days was quite often fatal. There weren't the same kind of drugs that are available now. And his doctor said he was probably going to die, and all his relatives were summoned to pay their final respects to him. And Lakshmana Swamy said, no, I'm not going to die. I haven't realized the self. I'm not going to die until I've had one more darshan of my guru. And it was that absolute, unshakable determination to survive and have another darshan of his guru that made the difference between life and death. So you can say that it was Bhagavan's power and grace that ultimately destroyed his eye when he showed up. But from his point of view, he showed a massive commitment to doing the practice and an unshakable determination to complete his practice and not die before he'd seen his guru again.